wonderful folks out there, and welcome back to Joygasm, a video game and movie podcast. I'm Russ, and he is Steve, and it's starting to look a whole lot like Christmas. In episode 298 today, December 2nd, 2022, we are going to be getting right into our topic of the day, which is Andor Season 1 Review. So there's no need to fast forward whatsoever, but we do ask that you smuggle that subscribe button and free that notification bell. That way you will not miss a single solitary episode of Joygasm that drops once a week each week. And we should go into the fact that we will be discussing spoilers. So if you haven't seen the show, just be forewarned. Steve, this has been an interesting situation because as normal Disney Plus shows typically go, we usually have about 6 episodes per season.
Right.
This one, however, is interesting in the sense that they pretty much kind of released 2 seasons worth as it applies to Disney Plus, because we have 12 episodes of Andor. And so we've been able to actually get a whole lot more VOD, aka video on demand, when it comes to figuring out just what this whole thing is about.
Or video that we demand.
Indeed.
And we demand more video.
Indeed.
Dov. Actually, not really. Yeah, that's actually what I was hoping for.
It was, you get an E for effort, Steve. So what did you think of the show overall with the 12 episodes? I hate to cut you off, but we did do a previous episode of Andor with the initial for 6 episodes. And so that was kind of more of like where it ended up. And so if you're interested in checking that out, you can see a lot of our comments back then. Continue, Steve.
Well, that wasn't like all of like the full 6 episodes. That was like
4.
Yeah. No, I like this show. I thought they did a great job. I thought that all the extra screen time they gave everybody was well worth it. Nothing felt rushed. Maybe a little bit slow at times, pacing wise, but I appreciated all that they did. It kind of felt refreshing in a way. I remember the comment that I made before was the adults seemed like they were right in this one. Like people were more invested in it. They were committed to it. The characters were committed to their characters. Everybody was delivering their lines well. We had a little bit of back and forth with Diego Luna because he's just kind of expressionless. He's like he's bored all the time, sort of things.
Kind of melancholy.
Yeah. I mean, I think he delivered his lines well. I'm giving him acting chops, but as far as expression, we were not so much giving him kudos for that. But the show overall, I think it's one of Disney Plus's better shows, my opinion. It's not going to be as explodey as some of the other Disney Plus Star Wars shows, and that's definitely okay. This one just felt more serious. It didn't feel like we had to follow a main character or a bigger character or a bigger villain around the Star Wars universe. This is like the kind of nitty gritty stuff that's happening on a regular basis, and it feels human, and it feels like what you would expect. And I liked a lot more than the criticisms that I have for it. So that would be, I guess, my high level thoughts.
Oh, nice.
Of the show so far, Russ.
Very nice. And you did finish all 12 episodes?
Oh, yeah. Stayed up all night watching it. Yeah, I went to bed at 3 in the morning, Russ.
Good man.
Yeah. Oh, I would have gone to bed sooner.
Force is strong with this one.
I would have gone to bed sooner. But one of the episodes made me go to sleep.
Oh.
So I passed out. And then I woke up at the end and thought, I'll just sleep for 10 minutes. I'll just rewind it back to what I missed. And then back. Okay.
Yeah.
Pretty much the whole entire thing. I missed like probably 35 minutes out of 50 years.
I can totally see you like almost like you're sleeping in bed and you wake up, you're like, Andor! Your wife's like, who's Andor? Explain yourself. You're like, nothing. It's just a TV show, honey.
They're smuggling weapons and boy, the mission.
Yeah, the mission.
The rebels.
Yeah.
I gotta get grandma out.
Stuck in the chair. That robot is so insolent. Passive aggressive. Grandma can't take that with her weak ticker.
Yeah, right. Which wake up, Binks. Sorry, I woke you up.
Yeah. Oh boy. Well, thank you for that, Steve. Thank you for that, indeed.
Welcome.
I agree with one of your main points, which you did
only
make
one?
early. Well, there's one that really stands out to me and that I wholeheartedly agree with, and that is the fact that this just seems like a more mature take in the Star Wars universe. You know, I think that this particular show is a pressure cooker.
Yes.
You know, we're seeing a lot of the different actors and characters all thrown in at different parts of the story and, you know, basically ratchet up that pressure and see what's going to happen as a result.
It did feel pretty tense at times.
It did feel pretty tense at times, despite the fact that there really weren't that many moments of big explosions or fighting or whatever. So, no, it was... but I appreciated that, though. I thought it was really nice to have things kind of changed up a bit in terms of instead of having, because I mean, I love me some explosions too. Don't get me wrong. I enjoy me some Star Wars style explosions and swash sci-fi bucklery. And in this situation, though, I enjoyed how things kind of built up. The other thing too, and this is something that we talked about as well in the previous.
You just touched me.
I did. I like to touch them and poke them. I also really loved the visuals of this. This was one of the first times I've watched a Disney Plus show where it just looks like a movie. I mean, you're watching it and the cinematography is great. The acting is great. There is just a certain level of production value that I really appreciate. And I think it's also largely the same, like in The Mandalorian, for instance. The Mandalorian is another example where I think we can all agree that the production value is at a point where that could, I mean, it looks like it could be a movie as well as a TV show. So I think that this definitely fits into that. It also really ties in nicely to what the creators did with Rogue One, a Star Wars story, which is what they did first before they did this show. And you see like how they're being very thoughtful and pragmatic about how they are kind of giving this as a bit of a prequel to that particular movie.
I was going to say, tagging on to your production values, to me, it seems like they filmed a lot more outside, or maybe they used a lot more different like production sites, I guess, versus like green screen.
Sure.
Because sometimes you could see you could basically just tell what's behind him, right? It's not so evident as it was before, like, oh, a blue line right around me, you know, sort of thing. It's a green screen. But it just seemed like they were outside more. Like when they were interacting with each other in that little valley, for example, just random breezes would come by and blow their clothes or blow their hair.
Yeah.
Or you'd see just like the trees in the background. Maybe they still use green screen. I don't know. But if they did, had me fooled.
They have new techniques when it comes to that sort of thing that honestly really got started around the Mandalorian show. And really, really great. But yeah, to your point, I think that there are quite a few different actual on location shoots for the show, and it pays off. I mean, you look at it and you just, as a viewer, you believe that they really are on these different alien planets. And honestly, you know, when I think of Earth, there are so many places that I myself have never been to. And then on top of that, I mean, when I say myself, I'm just talking about like tourist locations. Like I've never been to Europe. I always want to go to Europe. I want to check it out. I've never been to Japan. I always want to go to Japan. But that aside, there are places on the globe that are very alien in nature in terms of just things that we're not used to seeing, like certain rock formations or different types of exotic locales that, you know, you have different types of scouts in the movie industry that go out and they,
Sure.
research up this stuff. They go, oh, I found this great little cove or whatever, right? And you see it in shows like this, and it's like, my goodness, that looks so alien. But in actuality, it's actually just a really cool, hard to get to location on Earth. And I don't know, to me, it's one of those fun things to geek out about, where it's like, man, this planet has so much to discover and explore. And so we get a bit of a glimpse into that when we get to watch a show such as this. I do want to talk a bit about the cast, because if you recall, the last time that we talked about the show, we were still getting introduced to some of these characters. And now that we've watched all 12 episodes, we have gotten a much better idea of who's who, right?
Yeah.
I ended up making two lists. I made the list I just simply call the good, and the other list is the boring. And the boring is, certain things like either the character I felt didn't get developed enough, or maybe the performance just wasn't resonating with me, that sort of thing. So that's what I classified as the boring. But the good, though, first of all, I want to kick it off with Genevieve O'Reilly, who plays Mon Motha. I found every single scene that she was in to be captivating, and it was such a departure from like other parts of the show. And I think that the kudos really go to the show's creators in this regard, where they were able to tell so many different stories from different vantage points of different characters from different social statuses, and where they come from in the galaxy and that sort of thing, and how you could go from being like in a prison to like all of a sudden being in kind of more of like the political elite, right? And you're seeing how these different characters arcs are slowly coming together at certain places, right? So kind of intersecting here and there.
She was the senator, right? Like, kind of like the government official.
She was.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, she was, to me, she was a powerhouse. Like both the actor who played the role, who, her actual name is Genevieve. I thought that she did a fantastic job playing Mon Motha. I really loved how she had a different type of tension all her own, based off of, it was almost like her character was I don't know how to put it into words, but like, it's almost like the walls are closing in around her. Like kind of like if you were to think of like a metaphor, where it's like, she realizes she has this duty of trying to thwart what's going on with the Empire and that sort of thing. But then she also feels very limited in terms of like who she can trust. And it went into even like family, where like she really didn't have like a tight relationship with her husband, or like, so on and so forth. But what do you think of her?
Did her voice sound familiar at all to you, Rose?
No.
Her voice is the voice of Moira in Overwatch.
Are you sure? Are you serious?
I am dibbed it.
Really?
Yes, Rose.
Well, how about them apples?
Another one. Very familiar. Didn't know it until I looked it up. The intelligence officer. The blonde-haired, white-suited intelligence officer. High up in the ranks.
Yes.
Forgot her name. But she is the voice of none other than Yennefer from The Witcher. How you doing?
Really? I have her name written down here. I think her actual name is Denise Go. Gough is her last name.
That's Go.
Yeah. But you looked it up, and those are some of their credits, huh? Yeah. How about them apples?
Sweet.
I tip my proverbial hat to both of you ladies.
I take off my beanie to you.
Does it have a little helicopter spinny thing? Yeah.
Really nice one. It's blowy outside, Rose. Indeed. Windy. Indeed. No, yeah. So the lady who played the senator, good Genevieve.
I don't think it's Guinevere. I think it's Genevieve.
Her.
O'Reilly is her last name.
She did a great job.
Yes.
But yes, you're right. So she was very polished when she had to be polished.
Uh-huh.
And you really felt the tension come on when scenes came that required her to change or flip the coin rather, when she was talking with what's his face, the main rebel guy,
Indeed,
the arms dealer guy, sort of thing. What's his name? The guy who brings Cassian to the other planet, or the other side of the planet. Anyway, what's his face? I forgot what his name is.
Luthen.
Luthen.
Yes,
that's what. Sorry if I blew your ears out.
that's okay, Steve.
I do that from time to
That's
time.
okay.
I get excited. So anyway, when they were speaking,
Yeah.
you really felt the tension. You felt the tension at the dinner table when she can't reveal too much to her husband. Her husband, I would probably put on the boring list, honestly. I mean, he was kind of
I didn't find him boring necessarily, but he was a weasel. He definitely seemed pretty aloof. Like he had his own motivations,
purposefully aloof.
Well, exactly.
Yeah.
Like I think that his character was designed in such a way where I think that their marriage was headed in the direction of being estranged. They were together at that point in time. Like their relationship was there out of convenience because they had to have the optics, right? Like because she's a political figure, she needs to have this unified front of having like this family and everything else.
Or they're like a power couple, perhaps.
Maybe, but she seemed to be she was the main senator person. He was kind of along for the ride kind of thing. They got, and we found out that they were introduced, they got to know each other when they were kids, and due to their particular customs of their planet and everything else, that they ended up getting married when they were very young. So there's a history that's there, but at the same time, I feel like it's not really romantic,
No, it's not romantic, and he doesn't back her up as a parent either. Like when her daughter's popping off at her, and he's just kind of slumped at the table, and she's looking at him like, "Are you gonna, help me out?"
There's clearly issues. There are marital issues with the two of them. But again, that plays up really nicely with the character development of her character, as well as just like how we are seeing her get developed throughout the whole entire show, because you are seeing not only there is family drama, but then there's also political drama. She is feeling exposed based off of what little she can do to try and aid the rebellion in its kind of infant state, if you will, at that point in time.
Infancy.
Indeed, Steve, indeed.
But they just didn't really hash it out too much, or his character.
No, and I don't think it was necessary. I think they dropped enough nuggets to be able to get the viewer to understand, okay, this is the type of relationship that she has with him. And if they decide to do another season of Andor, yeah. Say Cassian. I'm like, no, it's Andor. Yeah. It's kind of the same thing. First name versus last name. But anyway, I think that certain things that they've done with various characters are done purposely in a sense that it just provides opportunities in the future to be able to flesh them out further, kind of see where they go. So anyway, I thought she did a fantastic job. Adria Arjona, who played Bix, she was the one who was getting tortured with that headset device.
Yep.
She's the kind of character where she's in the supportive role. You don't see her too often throughout the 12 episodes, but I thought that there was a neat presence about her. And honestly, I had sympathy. I felt really bad when they captured her and then they were going through this, and you're seeing how the more times that she gets exposed to whatever kind of torture device that thing is, it's really taking its toll. It's not like, oh, good, they turned it off and now I feel better. Like you can tell there are remaining side effects of being constantly exposed to that stuff. Did you feel the same way?
Yeah, I did. I was kind of hoping they would show that more because you saw them put the device on her head and then you knew it was painful. I don't know what happened, if it just was electrodes in her brain or something, or
the sound was just torturous.
Whatever it was. And then we heard her, or we saw her wince, and we heard her kind of scream, and then that was it. But I wish they would describe what that was more. I mean, yes, it does use our imagination, but it seemed like when she arrived in the room, somebody left who had just had that device put on them, and they looked like death.
Yeah.
Maybe they were dead. I don't think they were dead. I don't think they killed him, but
he was in a bad way.
He was in a bad way. Very bad way. And then when the next time we see her, she's kind of like in a similar state, but we don't see that kind of progression. Not that they needed to give us like a lot, but just maybe a little extra would have been nice.
It's true, Steve.
That would have been nice also to have her story a little bit more fleshed out too. Not like she's the main character per se, but her and Cassian had some history. And then she had some history on this planet with some other folks. And she was obviously an important player because she was sending signals out to Luthen, who got connected with Cassian. So she knew some players, and she was doing some secret stuff.
Yeah, she was definitely in one of those supportive roles where she was kind of one of those conduit types of roles of party A meet party B, that sort of thing. And again, it's like there's this kind of delicate balance that you have to play with all of your actors and your characters, in the sense that
how's that, Russ?
Not everybody can have the spotlight all the time. You have to have these different tiers. Honestly, like I said, I think that despite the fact that we didn't really see too much of her throughout all 12 episodes, that she really held her own. Like she was not a forgettable character. Every time I saw her, I remembered, oh yeah, that's who that person is, whatever. And I wanted to like find out what was going on, what was new, that sort of thing. So anyway, I had her written down. Denise Go, who we mentioned earlier, she plays Dedra. Wow. Like another really great performance from her, being this kind of, I don't know what her actual like Imperial job title was. She was like a lieutenant or something or other. I don't know. But anyway, she was the blonde haired woman who really just became obsessive over trying to foil the plans that this kind of burdening, or not burdening, but like what's that word? Like I can't remember what the word is. But anyway, basically like she was connecting the dots in such a way, seeing what this upstart rebellion was starting to do, and she was trying to thwart that. And I just I loved how it was almost like a juxtaposition to the senator, with Mon Motha, in the sense that Mon Motha was a senator. She wasn't a senator, but she was in this political position. Yeah, granted, it was more military in nature, but like, she still had to deal with the politics of her job. She still had to ward off. Like there was that one guy who like she was kind of butting heads with, and they were trying to like sabotage each other, that sort of thing. And then, she's also trying to like deal with that one guy. I can't remember his name, but basically the security guy who like lost his job because he bungled that whole operation with Andor initially. Right. He's got this obsession over her too. And so you're just like, okay, well, what the heck is going on? And so like seeing all that and then seeing how she was playing the role, I thought she had a commanding presence. What do you think?
Yeah, I thought she had a commanding presence too. I saw her more of just totally invested in her career. Yeah. Like which was interesting because you just see the Empire as the Empire and just this evil force in the galaxy, and there's a bug, I'm going to squash it because I can. Yeah. Sort of thing. And this was more complex. Yeah. Because this is like pre-huge Empire, right? And so,
well, the Empire at this point, I would say, was actually getting pretty big. Like this is we were witnessing the rising action of the strength and power. Like they were definitely consolidating it, and it really, I mean, they weren't at like kind of the climax of their power. I would say that happened more around like Rogue One or Episode 4, New Hope.
Right. But so the Empire's there, but like, people are understanding that they're there to colonize in a way or rule versus just, hey, we have a little outpost over here. Yeah. We're going to be doing security kind of deal, So they're not like they're not emanating this idea of they're going to be the ultimate threat to everybody yet. But this lady is totally invested in her career and willing to step on others to advance the career. I mean, okay, 2 security guards, die. I'm sure, and many of them die on whatever planet. This could be something that could be swept underneath the rug. But I mean, she was pulling on the string and kept pulling and kept pulling and kept pulling. Mm-hmm. And it was winning the favor of her superiors as well. And she didn't come across, I mean, to me, she could have been more evil, but she came across complex to me. Mm-hmm. She loved the power, wanted to advance her career. I keep saying that, but that's really the impression that I got with her. It wasn't just evil for the sense of just being evil. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I liked her character.
Yeah, I did too. I think that she definitely had a commanding presence every time she was on screen. I liked seeing her journey, her personal journey through being where she was when we first got introduced to her character, ascend, not necessarily the ranks per se, but just gaining respect within that little kind of strategy council that she was a part of. But also, too, one of my favorite moments of her particular character was actually in the last episode when she got into the middle of the scuffle that ensued, and she was basically all of a sudden getting beaten on and picked up and thrown around and stuff by all of the native folk who were very upset and mad about what was going on. But furthermore, when the guy who was like all into, let me see if I have his name on here. Syril,
Syril, I think.
Yeah, Syril, who's played by Kyle Soller, or Soller, excuse me. You know, the moment where he saves her from the riot, from the what do you call it? Gosh, what's that word? When you have a bunch of people,
like a mob.
Mob, that's it. Thank you. Man, a 3-letter word just it sounds like a slippery pig. Anyway, I love that moment where she realizes who he is when he pulls her into that one room, and she is terrified. Not of him, but just she, for the first time in her life, experienced what it was like to be completely powerless
and vulnerable.
And the whole time, all 12 episodes, we're seeing her as she likes the power. She likes being in that position of invulnerability, right? And to have that stripped from her in an instant to the point where all of a sudden there was nothing she could do. And in fact, if that one guy who she pretty much kind of kept a stiff arm to, because she was like, who the heck are you? Like, I'm not interested in you. What is going on? If he hadn't intervened, she probably would have either been severely injured or killed in the process. So again, I loved how they didn't have to spoon feed us that. It was written all over her face, which is a testament to her acting. I felt like her acting was just perfect. It was like, wow, that was something I did not expect to see from her character. And when I saw it, I was like, wow, okay, that is cool. That is a very ironic coming full circle with her character.
That was a cool scene. That was the final episode, I believe. There's something to be said for when you're commanding orders behind a desk and you're screwing with people's lives that don't have any effect on yourself, but have an effect on, your decisions have ramifications on people living, normal human folks. But you don't see that sitting behind a desk, right? You're just typing out an order, telling someone to do something, dictating here and there, or maybe swiping something on your little tablet, but you don't see the effect in people's lives.
It's like a false sense of security.
That's right. Until you're in the thick of it, you're right down in the battle. You're like, can I shoot? Do I know how to kick some butt here? Do I have a weapon? No, I don't. But the other guy did. Okay, he wasn't ranked as high as far as being an official or being a commander or anything. He was a lot lower on the totem pole, but he had battle experience. He knew how to shoot. He wasn't so panicked at the sight of crowds or destruction, explosions, that sort of thing. And in a way, they were equal. He got her out of the situation where she could have been easily killed or tromped or whatever. And there's less panic on his face than there is on hers. There was just terror expressed in hers.
Yeah, absolutely. The next actor I have on here is Veranda Sethu. She played Cinta Kaz. She was one of the kind of the freedom fighter rebellion types. She was the Indian lady.
I thought she was fine. I don't know. I kind of thought her character was a bit throwaway.
Yeah.
I'm not saying she did a bad job acting at all. Delivered her lines well, but it just seemed like she was forgettable in a sense.
She was not in very many episodes.
She wasn't in very many episodes, and then there was a character, what was his name, Skeet or something like that, or the guy that Andor ends up killing because the guys, he said we could take half the loot, we can split it, blah blah blah.
Oh,
What was his
I
name?
can't remember his name, but I know who you're talking about. You're the guy who like you thought was like one of the most idealistic out of the
Right.
bunch, and it turns out like he's just another common.
He has his own
thief,
motivations.
smuggler.
Yeah, exactly. So he has a conversation with Mr. Andor, and he says, this person over here, Cinta, she's like one of the hardest, one of us, all of us. She's been through it all, and she's most dedicated. I go, okay. I'm buying it, and I just didn't see it in anywhere.
Yeah.
Honestly, so I kind of thought that not the actress did a bad job.
Yeah.
The lines were fine. She delivered her lines, but her character overall, I thought was kind of forgettable.
Yeah, I think that a large reason for what you're talking about has to do with the fact that she just really wasn't in too many episodes. The episodes that she was in, however, I mean, I liked her look. I liked her presence. I thought her character had a certain level of not necessarily mystique per se, but just like there was definitely more depth to that particular character that I wanted to get to understand better. And even in the last, I would say, a couple of episodes, we did get to see her kind of do her thing a bit here and there. And so while it wasn't as powerful or like to the level of some of these other actors and characters that we've been talking about, I still think that she's worthy of note just because I was like, I'd like to be able to kind of see more of that character. That was an interesting throat sound.
It was rapid, Russ. I wanted to jump in and say something before you moved on.
Say it, Steve. Say it.
She was part of one of my favorite scenes out of the show.
Oh.
It was that scene where I think they were target practicing or something. Or what were they doing there? Yeah, they had guns out and they were doing some exercise, marching, what to expect before.
They were training.
Training. Sure, Russ, training. I mean, they had their firearms and their rifles and stuff.
I have trouble saying mob. You have a problem saying training.
Sure, Russ.
It's okay, though, because we help each other out.
Anyhow, so she hears the TIE fighter.
Yes. Yeah.
Back, and they go, it's gone. And she's like, no, I don't think it's going to go that quickly. And they cover up all the guns and everything that would just give them away.
Yeah.
Because anything the pilot's going to see is just random people. And it's not just on a different show. If the Empire saw random people, they'd be like, "Oh, enemies, random people there. Let's kill them," sort of thing, But they were coexisting at the time. There were other tribes that were living on this planet or this area.
Yeah.
And so the fact that it flew by, being inquisitive, was fine, even though it was kind of really in their face. But they knew that had this thing seen their weapons or seen what they were doing, of course, that they probably would have taken them out.
Suspicious.
Yes, but so she says, "Okay, cover everything up." I don't think that was just a one-time pass. I think he's coming back, and they trust her. And that thing comes barreling over the hill and goes right in front of them. Oh man, I would just everyone was asleep. I really wanted to crank up the volume on that.
Yeah,
that was a pretty awesome scene.
It was, and I think it speaks to the fact that once again, like Rogue One, a Star Wars story, they do such a nice job of creating this ecosystem of Star Wars where it's not like, we're focused just on this little merry band of characters, but actually there are all... Pardon me.
Good luck editing that out, Rosa.
As I was saying.
I'm going to breathe that in.
Yeah, wafting. It's a good thing we have some
tasty.
As I was saying before, all of a sudden my body decided to
convulse.
Simultaneously combust.
Inject all that snot out of your body.
Gets all over the lens. Anyway, what I was saying was I really liked how the show's creators have been continuous in developing this overall galactic ecosystem where there are all kinds of things that are happening at given points of time, or maybe they're happening simultaneously, like while we're seeing this thing go on, meanwhile this thing is going on. And I just really appreciate that as a Star Wars fan, because I want there to be kind of like this larger than life situation. And I feel like that's the biggest thing, because they don't have the luxury of being able to rely on the stalwart characters like Luke Skywalker, Han Solo, like Princess Leia, Chewbacca, Lando, so on and so forth. But what they can rely on and what they can push, in fact, is, okay, here's why all like this whole world is such an epic place, because we get to kind of like bounce around from these newer characters, and the characters act as almost like a representation of like what that particular faction or area is doing. So like you have certain characters that kind of represent kind of what the Empire is up to, what the kind of scheming they're doing and how they're assimilating this power, versus like, oh, here are these characters that are kind of the OG part of the rebellion that kind of light the fire, so to speak, right? And then you have some other characters too that are maybe smugglers or maybe find themselves in different parts of the galaxy that we didn't even know existed. Like, I would say another character and actor on my list is Andy Serkis. Like, I didn't even realize that Andy Serkis was in this show, and all of a sudden, like, the whole show like does this hard turn left that I was not anticipating at all, and all of a sudden we're in some kind of prison that's who knows where it is in the galaxy. But I mean, honestly, those episodes were some of the most powerful, memorable moments, I feel like, from the show. Do you agree?
I do, but that prison sequence, I will say, and at least in the beginning, I thought was one of the weak points of the show.
Oh.
Honestly. I don't know if we want to segue there quite yet, or if I could just say something real quick.
Go ahead, yeah.
So this could have been of my mental state at the time. But
to remind you the time you busted out of prison.
Yeah, let me show you the tats like got in prison. You
Shawshank redemptioned yourself out of there, didn't you?
Anyhow, so Cassian is telling his grandma, hey, we got to go. Is his mom or his grandma?
Who?
The old lady.
I think she was like his adoptive mother.
Sure. Great. His mom.
Basically.
Great.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, she was old enough to be his grandmother, but I think by all intents and purposes, I mean, she saved him when she was a kid and then grew him up, but
grew him up.
Not like a vegetable. Here, I grew him up. No, she raised him.
I put him in the dirt. It came out a man. So
dirt from the Shawshank Redemption pocket.
we see him tell her we got to go. We can go anywhere we want to go. Let's go tonight. Let's go in the morning. Whatever. And then all of a sudden we just see him on a different planet, and he's just kind of whistling Dixie, toodle-a-doo, and I'm like, okay. He already left.
Yeah.
Okay. This is the place he decided to go, and the stormtroopers were behind him, and he just kind of thought, okay, they're not after me because they know who I am, and they're just kind of whatever. He just didn't seem like. He was so hardened and jaded. It seemed like it was a sequence in memory, but not necessarily present time to me. And so, but they kept going with it, and I just thought, okay, it's happening now. And it's not a memory. Even when the stormtrooper is speaking with him, he just seems like a regular guy. He doesn't seem like Cassian that we've been following this entire show. He's like, oh, I'm a tourist. Yeah, what's up? What's going on? I didn't do anything wrong. He didn't outwit the stormtrooper. He didn't try and fight him. Maybe he just didn't want to die. But it just seemed like everything impressive that he had done in the show was gone in that sequence. And then now he was just in prison.
I think that particular sequence that you're talking about where he was on that other planet, because if you recall, he was able to walk away with all those credits, and he really felt like, oh, I can start like the ideal life that I want for myself. And that's why he wanted to try and bring his mother along, but she wouldn't have any of it. And so we see him like, he's got some, I interpret it as like some hot prostitute that's in bed, he's got all these credits and stuff. And at the same time, the whole the point of that was to demonstrate how, despite him being on a completely different planet, he was in fact a tourist. He was living the high life. I mean, he had a great hotel room or apartment, whatever it was that looked out over the beach, and he had all these fine clothes on and stuff. that when he ended up, seeing what was going on and all of a sudden got questioned by one of those troopers, and how like he was just like, I don't know. I was literally just walking down and literally what we got to witness was this abuse of power, right? We got to witness which was basically a totalitarian, like authoritarian dictatorship that was happening, where there were no citizens' rights whatsoever. Like basically if a soldier or a trooper looked at you cross, then they could basically ruin your life.
Right.
There was no like representation. There was no like, blind justice or whatever. Right. We got to really see him just go through and get processed. And all of a sudden he had 6 years of his life stripped away, in which later on we discovered too, actually his whole life has been thrown away because it's what was initially deemed as a prison or a prison camp was actually more of a slave camp. Like they were doing those kind of things on purpose because they had nefarious plans to do something like, I don't know, build the Death Star, and you need a whole lot of labor to make something like that. So again, those types of things to me, I felt were very powerful because it forced Andor to have to mature and realign his thinking on things, because his whole life was just thinking, oh, if I just get enough credits, I can just get out of the smuggling business and I can just have an easy life. And he really learned the hard way that like, no, actually it doesn't matter what you do with those credits and whatnot. The main problem is actually the Galactic Empire, and they're going to make your life a living hell.
No, I got all that,
which was great, right?
It is good. It kind of reminds me of the scene from, I think, the third Lord of the Rings, the Return of the King, where Merry and Pippin are like, we're out. Well, let's go home back to the Shire.
Yeah.
And then Pippin goes, you don't understand. This is so big. This is so huge. If we don't do something now, as small as we are, there's going to be no Shire to go back to. And everything that we've been fighting for is going to be lost.
That's a very good.
Just got goosebumps. Oh. Anyhow, so yes, that scene reminded me of that. But that's where I think I had the pacing issue, is that in the prison, there wasn't enough really to keep my focus. I think there was an entire episode and there was just nothing happening except for talking, really. And then I'm like, okay, like I need more than this. I need some drama. I need something like, shove popcorn in my mouth, give me something else. And then there just wasn't until, of course, a few more episodes down the line or towards the end of the show, then it really picked up and I was back on track.
Yeah, I just thought it was such a treat to see Andy Serkis in a Star Wars movie like this. This is actually his second role, because he was the antagonist in the newer Star Wars films, and the name escapes me for the moment, but he was basically playing kind of like the Emperor version 2, but he was playing that CG character that had the big gash in his head and his face looked all gnarly, and Snoke. It was like
Snoke with a K, I think.
Yeah, maybe it was Snoke.
Yeah.
So anyway, this was his second role in the Star Wars universe, and I just loved it. I loved his performance. I loved just what the whole thing represented, and I don't know, like it was such an unexpected turn and treat. Yeah, it was a total treat, but like that's the kind of stuff that makes the show really strong, in my opinion, is like, you have these unpredictable moments they're not even moments, but like, these unpredictable turns. And then suddenly it's like, oh, wow. Like, and for me, it was a bigger deal because of the fact that Diego Luna's acting and whatnot for this character Andor. And I've said this in the last episode that we did our impressions of this show on, he just doesn't resonate with me within this role. Like, I'm sure there are other types of roles, such as Narcos, for example, that like I resonate more with what kind of performance he's giving. And it's not entirely his fault. It's more about how the character is written, because there's just no charisma. If you recall, I was talking about charisma and that sort of thing. However, in this whole jail prison sequence, that actually caused me to kind of get to know him a bit more and appreciate him a bit more. I still think he's kind of one of more of the boring characters, honestly. partially also because there's just such a large roster of characters that we got to know in this show. And as a result, like we have like a number of characters and actors. I'm just like, oh, wow. Like these are the ones that are my personal favorite. But in terms of what we got to see with that, I really did love it. I love the whole jailbreak sequence. And honestly, again, coming full circle and having that little twist of irony at the end where they've won their freedom, so to speak. People are jumping in the water, but then Andy Serkis's character says, I can't swim. And we're just left with that.
Yeah, and then Andor gets knocked off into the water, and that's all. Yeah. Ugh. Yeah. And I remember thinking at the time, like, what are you going to do? I mean, you can either live with this as your legacy of you let, 5,000 people, I think it was, in total, I think they were talking about, go back to their lives. You freed 5,000 people from a slave camp. And so that's what you've done with your life, which is phenomenal, which is amazing. Can you live? And can someone drag you? You know, there's no life raft. There's no nothing. Everyone's just swimming for everything they've got to get back. And who knows how many people died.
Sure.
I mean, do you take that chance or do you live until the Empire lands and just executes you? You're like, what do you do at that point? You know, that was a pretty poignant scene because, I mean, Andy, I think really brought it, that expression with his eyes and his face. He goes, I can't swim. Like, just peace out sort of thing. You have a great life. You know, glad we did what we did just now, but only days or hours left to live.
Hollywood tragedy.
Yeah.
Right. Where like you see this character that, I don't know, like everyone finds to be pivotal and interesting, and you kind of witness them come around and you see their character development, and then they're offered their freedom. In which case, if you recall, like his character in particular was like counting down the days. He had like 218 more shifts or days or something like that before he was freed. And so it clearly meant a lot to him that he's like, look, I don't want anybody screwing up. I don't want anybody acting out. I want to be able to get out of here. I've put my time in, kind of thing. And then you get to see how he realizes, oh, wow, I'm never getting out of here. Like this is just a facade and I'm going to be here for the rest of my days. And then you get to see him be offered like, here's your freedom, but then due to the fact that he can't swim, it's like, we don't know if he actually made the jump or not. I assumed he didn't. And that's a huge ironic moment there. Stellan Skarsgård, we mentioned a bit earlier, Luthen. I thought he did a great job throughout all the episodes. I think that he shouldered a different type of stress, a different type of tension, in the sense that, he was very much like a chess player in the sense that he was just putting his pieces in different places. He was very careful, but he's also someone who's having to sacrifice quite a bit. In fact, when we have that one scene where we get to realize that there's that one redheaded guy who was on the Imperial Strategy Council. Like, I just figured he was part of the Empire, but actually he's a mole.
He's a mole.
He's part of the rebellion. I was like, oh,
yeah,
okay.
Cool. Yeah.
That was really cool. But then on top of that too, is the scene that he shared with Luthen, which again, that was probably another one of my favorite scenes out of all 12 episodes, where we really don't even know about the redheaded guy at all, other than just the brief scenes we've seen him in. But in this one instance of a scene, it's like, wow, like there was so much that was revealed about this character. And I found myself like really getting drawn into it. And I absolutely loved it when, after he's talked about why he's just like, man, I just don't think I could do this anymore. A lot of things have changed especially since I became a father and I have this baby now. And, he asks Luthen, he's like, well, I'm in this position of just feeling trapped and everything else. And I just, I'm sacrificing a lot. Like, what have you sacrificed? And what was fun for me was, fun's the wrong word. I would say what was more like kind of a delightful surprise, I'll say, is the reaction could have been any number of things that Luthen could have given, right? He could have been like a jerk to the guy, or he could have been sad or whatever. But I thought that the specific response that Luthen gave was perfect.
Yeah.
Where it was like he was still being respectful of this comrade of his. It was clear that he kind of all of a sudden needed a moment to kind of process that question, because it was in fact a question that perhaps his character really hasn't addressed consciously, subconsciously, sure. But I just loved how like it was a nice long, it wasn't long in terms of like overdrawn or boring answer, but it was a very like,
It's poignant.
it was a very thoughtful filled like response to his question, to the point where, you know, yeah, he did get a little emotional about it, but at the same time I was like, wow, that was so well said. Like kudos to the screenwriters, because like that was so well written, and it just hit the nail on the head where like at the very end, like after he goes through all these different things, he's like, so you asked me, what have I sacrificed? Everything. And I think that is at the crux of the show, where, especially when it comes to the rebellion side, we really get this broad understanding of like how much pressure they're under. And again, it's like what I said earlier, it's a pressure cooker of a show, but you really see different forms of sacrifice and how these people understand that what they are doing is for the greater good, despite the fact that their lives will most likely be ruined or
Changed,
maybe killed in the process. So that, to me, that had a lot of weight to it in a very good way, because that's the kind of stuff that I think helps to separate it from more of like kind of more the shallow, one-dimensional.
Yeah, and that scene also was very good because, I mean, so they're in the elevator, they're in that spot where they can't be heard, can't be noticed, in the middle of like a tower, the structure part of the tower. And they're having that exchange, and yeah, it's uncomfortable because the guy who works for the Empire, and he's being this mole, he doesn't want to find out because he has more to lose now. He's got a wife, he's got a kid, and I'm like, okay, I can't enough, I don't have a kid yet, but I mean, I can understand the fact that, okay.
Well, even the mental stress of him being all alone.
The mental stress of him being all alone. And so, but if Luthen would have said, yeah, okay, you've done enough, peace out, sort of thing, the dude's still working for the Empire, who's the enemy.
Yeah.
And so, like, at that point, we're adversaries. If you stop, and I think he realized that too, which is why they didn't really get close to each other.
Well, no, actually, if you recall, the redheaded guy was actually saying that he was thinking he could just quit the job working for the Empire. And so that's when Luthen was saying, no, you don't understand. Like, this is not a job that you can just leave. Like, they don't work that way.
I may have missed that then, because the way I understood it was he didn't want, he was too fearful of continuing to be the mole and to get found out and then killed, and also like his family being killed. And so he wanted to stop being the mole. That's how I maybe interpreted that wrong, but that's how at least I understood it when I was watching it. And then that whole exchange was, Luthen said what he said, which is what you quoted. And then they went on their merry way, and the guy had to take a bit to process and collect himself and think like, okay, yeah, I need to continue this. You're doing this job. It's not all about me. It's about collectively the cause. But I don't know. I just thought he came across to me as if he just wanted to be working for the Empire, collect a paycheck, or advance his career, and that be that. Now, like, that was the safer option, because if he became a regular citizen again, then he would be one of the regulars, one of the underlings in a way that was about to get crushed by the Empire. And he didn't want that either.
Yeah.
So he was like, self-conflicted. But anyway, to me, it was just like, okay, if you're walking away from this, you're my enemy, and I might kill you for it. Mm-hmm. Like right here, right now. But he didn't, and he gave him new vigor, I guess, for the cause, and then they departed.
Right. Yeah, the show itself so far has a number of very powerful, memorable scenes that rely a lot on the actor's ability to deliver. And I feel like they are delivering in a lot of different places. Ben Miles plays Senator Tay, who was the friend of Mon Motha. He was that older gentleman who was also a senator. I've never seen him, at least not to my knowledge. I don't think I've seen him in anything else before. I really liked his look, and I liked how he delivered his lines. I thought he was a very unique character. Again, one of those characters that you really don't see in a lot of episodes. You only see him here and there, whatever. But like the times that we do see him, I'm enthralled. I'm like, okay, who is this guy? Like this guy, I mean, he has what I call like the old school Star Wars look. Like he totally fits like Star Wars style characters in my opinion. And it was great to be able to see like how he was getting kind of roped into some of this stuff and like some of the relationship complexities of like with him and Mon Motha, how they were kids growing up and, you know, she's trying to rely on him for things, but yet he ends up like introducing her to like, I don't know if this other guy was just a thug or if he was also a politician. I couldn't quite understand that, but like, you know, she, once again, another component of like the walls closing in where like, you know, due to the fact that she had 400,000 credits that were missing, she was in this tight place and she didn't know really what to do. And then we finally see how she had no choice. And so this thug's family is being introduced to her family because the thug wants his son to meet her daughter, basically get set up for marriage, basically. And she wants nothing to do with it. And so you're seeing yet another level of sacrifice that she's having to make in order to keep her cover going on because she realizes what the greater good is. But I mean, again, the show constantly revisits that question at what cost, right? I think it's pretty cool, Steve. Yes. Pretty good. So those were the ones that were on like the good list for me. The boring ones, like Diego Luna, I've already talked about. There was, let's see. Oh, Kyle Soller, who was Syril, you know, he lived with his mom, that sort of thing. He intrigued me at the beginning, but then it's like the show didn't really know what to do with his character. And it was just kind of weird where like he was in stasis or hiatus for most of the 12 episodes. And then all of a sudden it was like, I don't know, the final handful of episodes. And all of a sudden he comes back into the picture and he does certain things. It's like, oh, okay, well, that's a bit interesting or whatever. I think that was more on the side of like how the character was developed or, you know, lack thereof. I'm just kind of like, why is this character here? Like he was so interesting in the beginning and then it just kind of like,
Yeah, I think the story just diverted into something else. And when we were in that kind of marketplace or that little suburb, I guess, then it was easier to connect the dots between like the security officers and the rebels because everybody was in the same area versus, you know, Cassian, who was then in a different spot or different planet altogether. And then you had the rebellion team and then you had you know, something else going on over here and then something else going on over there. And it gets a bit hard to, you know, keep all the players at play when they're so far apart versus when they're all together. So I think after that rebellion took place with stealing of the credits and whatnot, then they could kind of reel it back in and we can get back into his life and see what he's doing living with his mom.
Lastly, Faye, who played Vel, she was the woman. She had blonde hair. She was the aunt. She was like Mon Motha's sister. And
she was the one.
She was the freedom fighter, like we saw. We got introduced to by Luthen early on and that sort of thing. I found her to be kind of annoying, honestly. Like she was just so caught up in being kind of like having the tough exterior and like. The one thing I did think that was interesting was the kind of aha realization of like, oh, she's Mon Motha's sister. She plays this aunt. It's like, oh, okay, well I didn't expect that. That was interesting. But like, I don't know. I just felt like she wasn't a character. Once again, she didn't have any kind of charisma. I didn't find her appealing. She came across to me as kind of, I don't know, just there and annoying and everything else. And like, it was drama for the sake of just needing some drama. Like, oh, can you sprinkle some drama on that? It's like, I didn't connect with that character personally. And, it was interesting too, because I felt like her purpose in the show got wrapped up when Cassian went over and like, basically like, you know, said this person tried to rob you of your credits and stuff. You know, she was trying to save the other kid who had been basically killed. And that was kind of the end of it, right? Like it was kind of like, Cassian took his share and he left her with the remainder and left. And it was kind of like, okay, I feel good about this. Like, okay, that part has played out. Now we're going on to the next chapter. But then to have her reemerge, I'm like, why? Like, and even at the end, like she didn't do anything revolutionary or remarkable, or I mean, she was just kind of there, and she gave her kind of squinty, hard look and assessing the situation. And I'm just like, no, I'm bored.
Yeah, I wish they would have done something better with her towards the end. I see what you mean. Like she was interesting in the beginning.
Yeah.
When Luthen was speaking with her and he basically introduces Cassian to her. But after that, they didn't really do much with her character. You're right there. I kind of wish they brought her back in the end. What did they even do with the other half of the credits?
What do you mean?
Cassian got his, and they stole a bunch of money.
Oh, I can't remember.
What did they do with it?
I think it was to fund the rebellion.
I'm guessing, but they never really, at least I totally missed it. He's like, I'm taking half. I'm like, that's a lot to carry with you. I mean, that's all that gold and whatever was in there.
Yeah.
And then he takes the ship and goes, I guess. And then she has hers. And then they never really say, oh, we got rich, and oh, we've got, we've bought a lot more weapons, and we bought a lot more ships, and oh, the rebellion's a lot better off, or here's that 400,000 back, and credits you.
Yeah, I don't remember.
Like, what happened to it?
Yeah, I'm sure it's there. We just missed it.
Great, both of us.
I do think, though, I mean, the whole purpose of why they were going for those credits was to fund. It was like the start of the rebellion. Basically, they had to buy ships and so on and so forth. So. Well, we have talked for an hour now, and I would like to know your rating of the show.
Russ, I'm going to give it a 4-star.
4-star from Steve.
4 stars. This show was definitely a breath of fresh air. I think it came out on Disney Plus a little bit too late. I feel like, I think this should have been one of the shows like after The Mandalorian to continue the whole like upward slope of the Star Wars content they were bringing out. Lately it seems like it's been going like this, and maybe more like this than this, in my opinion anyway. But I feel like the movie that we got to know Cassian in, what was it, Rogue One, right? In it was fresher in everyone's minds earlier on than like now. So I think the show is a little bit late coming out, but I'm glad they brought it out. Mm-hmm. I feel refreshed in the Star Wars universe, seeing this show as good of quality as it is, with the production values being on location, not so much explosions and lightsabers and green screens and whatnot, but more character development and quality of writing. Thank you very much. Directing, music. There was tension, like we've been talking about. The complexity of everybody's decisions having weight and bearing on other people. More than just good versus evil. All the little webs and intricacies and within the Empire versus in the Rebellion. I liked a lot of the characters that were written in. Luthen was a huge. I really did like his character, and I'm looking forward to seeing what they do with him in later seasons.
Yeah,
I think they left a lot to the imagination, but purposefully so for seasons to come. But I'm with you in that. Diego Luna needs to have like more expression to bring more presence to the screen. He doesn't do a bad job acting. I thought his acting was great, except for like his expression. That's like literally my only criticism of him. But for the most part, I thought they did a very good job with the show. I really enjoyed it. I can't wait for the next season.
Right on. Thank you for that, Steve.
You're welcome.
I too give it 4 stars. We are simpatico yet again, Steve. I think that this was a unique challenge for the creators in the sense that most people, and I include myself in this, have been conditioned to expect, when I hear Star Wars, it's like, oh, I want to see Jedis. I want to, lightsabers. I want to see tremendous space opera battles,
Space dog fighting.
yeah. Just the kind of the tried and true of what we have come to expect from Star Wars. But in this instance, though, they went out on a limb, and I commend them for it, because we got introduced to a number of quality characters, many of which I'm very interested in seeing, like if they decide to greenlight additional seasons. Very curious to see where they go from here. I think that leading up to a Rogue One movie, I think that there is quite a bit there that they can have fun with. They have now established the creative sandbox, and they have these characters that are now developed quite a bit. And I just want to see what happens when you kind of, you toss these characters into the formula and mix it up a bit and see kind of what happens and see as they continue on their journeys. But I do really think it's a neat aspect to like how you don't have to have characters that know the Force or,
right.
have like these classical archetypes of what makes Star Wars characters recognizable. They have intentionally instead created these characters that tend to be kind of more of like the common man or the common person, right? And that is something that is it can be a creatively difficult lift to make, but if you make it successfully, it's like, oh wow, because they're speaking, it's almost as if like kind of the running theme also works in their favor as they approached making this show, which is like, the overarching goal is worth kind of the sacrifice that they make, right? Well, it's like, what we're doing all of this so that we can provide more of this well-rounded world that is alive and organic and breathing and like, has a symbiotic relationship with each other. And like you get to see kind of this evolutionary period of what's happening between the classic Star Wars movies. I don't know. I think that a lot of that is a lot of fun to be able to see. I do think it is interesting in the sense that it is a departure from the tried and true formula of Star Wars. What we talked about, like the George Lucas Star Wars films, because there was more of a balance between good versus evil, right? Like you had your merry band of protagonists and they had their banter, and like we enjoyed seeing them get themselves into these like seemingly impossible situations, but somehow they made it out, they survived, and there was a hoorah moment kind of thing. This doesn't have that anymore though. This is predominantly in that more, the Empire has won. These people are recognizing that they've got to push back, but at what price? And so it's very heavy, right? It's this very melancholy, pessimistic environment that they are in. And so it is a bit of a change in that regard too, where it's like, I do like having a balance. I like having, mixing it up where we get to have more of that swashbuckling goodness and stuff like that. But that's not to say that like I don't enjoy this at all. I do think that this is a nice breath of fresh air, I will say. That wraps up this episode of Joygasm. Well, thank you so much for hanging out with us. If you enjoyed this episode, we invite you to check out patreon.com/Joygasm, which is spelled JOYGASM, and consider becoming a monthly contributor. You'll gain exclusive perks and early access to the show. Not to mention it financially helps us continue doing the podcast. Also, click on that subscribe button as well as that notification bell. That way you will not miss a single episode of Joygasm that drops once a week each week. And while you're at it, you can do a search for @JoygasmTV on your favorite social media platform of choice. We're on all of them. Last but not least, do a search for Joygasm TV on Twitch to see us stream our gaming adventures live every Wednesday night at 9:30 p.m. Central Time. We hope you have enjoyed hanging out with us as we have you, and we will see you next week.